In a viral clip, after she made a foul play, Brittney
Griner just said something on camera that has broken the internet in a way that very few moments in the history of women's professional basketball have ever broken it. And the specific thing she said, the specific words she chose, the specific context in which she chose to say them, and the specific reaction those words have produced across every platform where sports conversation happens, is a story that goes so far beyond the immediate viral moment that the basketball world is going to be processing what happened and what it means for weeks. I am a grown man. Those 4 words coming out of the mouth of a WNBA player during what was supposed to be a routine competitive moment have produced the kind of internet explosion that only happens when something simultaneously funny and serious and strange and revealing all arrives in the same 4-word package, delivered with the kind of raw, unfiltered energy that the internet cannot resist regardless of what any individual person thinks about the specific person who delivered it. The WNBA is erupting. The sports internet is completely losing its mind. And the conversation that has been ignited around what Griner said, why she said it, what it reveals about her competitive identity, and what the internet reaction to it tells you about the broader cultural dynamics surrounding women's basketball right now, is the conversation this video is about. Today I am breaking down exactly what happened, why those specific 4 words in that specific moment created the specific reaction they created, and what the internet explosion around this moment reveals about where women's basketball sits in the cultural conversation right now, in a way that the standard sports analysis of the moment is completely failing to capture. Brittney Griner's relationship with the sports internet has always been complicated in ways that reflect the complicated intersection of elite competitive excellence, physical distinctiveness, personal authenticity, and the specific cultural dynamics that surround a player of her profile in the current media environment. Griner is one of the most physically imposing players in the history of women's basketball. She stands 6'9". She has a wingspan that rivals NBA players who compete at her height. Her physical presence on a basketball floor is simply unlike anything else that the WNBA has produced at any other point in its history. And the internet's relationship with that physical presence has been, depending on which corner of the internet you are looking at, a source of genuine and deep athletic admiration, a subject of sustained and often cruel commentary, and a complex cultural conversation about gender, physicality, competition, and the specific expectations that different audiences bring to their engagement with elite women's athletes. All of that existing context, everything the internet has already been saying and thinking and processing about Griner across her entire professional career, is the background against which the "I am a grown man" moment arrived. And understanding that background is essential to understanding why the moment produced the specific explosion it produced, rather than a smaller or a differently directed reaction. Let us start with exactly what happened, because the specific context of the moment is the foundation of everything that follows, and the mainstream coverage has been treating the viral clip in isolation from the competitive circumstances that produced it, in ways that prevent the full analytical picture from emerging. The moment occurred during a game situation that involved a specific and competitive physical exchange between Griner and another player on the floor. A physical exchange that the officiating crew made a specific decision about, and Griner's reaction to that officiating decision was the specific trigger for the words that have now been heard by every person with an internet connection who has any awareness of sports or sports-adjacent culture. The "I am a grown man" statement was not delivered into a microphone in a press conference setting. It was not a prepared statement or a crafted public communication. It was the raw and immediate vocal expression of a competitor's frustration with a specific officiating call in a specific competitive moment, delivered with the kind of unfiltered authenticity that happens when an elite competitor is fully in the heat of competition and says exactly what they are feeling without the filter of professional communication management that the press conference podium typically applies. The specific officiating call that triggered the statement, whatever its precise nature in the context of the physical exchange that preceded it, was experienced by Griner as inadequate to the physical reality of what had actually occurred, and her expression of that experience in the specific terms she chose is the moment that the internet has not been able to stop talking about. But here is where the analysis needs to go beyond the surface description of what happened, and into the specific reasons why those particular 4 words, in that particular moment, produced an explosion of the magnitude the title of this video describes. Now let us talk about why I Am a Grown Man specifically produced the internet explosion it produced, rather than any of the other expressions of competitive frustration that athletes regularly deliver in the heat of competition without generating anything approaching the cultural reaction this moment has created. The internet explodes over specific athlete moments, for reasons that are almost always more complex than the moment itself. And the complexity behind the Griner explosion involves at least 4 distinct threads that are operating simultaneously, and that together produce the specific quality and the specific magnitude of the reaction. The first thread is the pure comedy of the unexpected. There is something genuinely and immediately funny about the specific 4 words "I am a grown man" being delivered with the competitive conviction that Griner delivered them in the context of a women's basketball game. Not because of anything cruel or dismissive about what the words mean, but because of the specific contrast between the competition's context and the specific claim being made, which lands as both completely true in the physical sense that anyone who has seen Griner play immediately understands, and completely unexpected in the competitive framing that makes it simultaneously the most and least surprising thing a basketball player has ever said during an officiating dispute. The second thread is the deeper truth that lives underneath the comedy. Griner is physically a person whose competitive presence has always occupied a space that the conventional frameworks for describing women's basketball players were not built to fully accommodate. And the specific 4 words she chose to express her competitive frustration in this moment are, in a very specific and very literal physical sense, a description of her athletic reality that the officiating crew and the competitive framework around her has consistently failed to adequately account for. The comedy is real, but it is comedy that lands on top of a deeper and more complicated athletic truth. The third thread is the way the moment interacts with the broader cultural conversation about Griner specifically, including the most difficult and the most profoundly serious chapter of her public life, which is her detention in Russia and the period of her life that followed her return. Griner has been through something that very few professional athletes and very few human beings have experienced. And the specific raw authenticity of the "I am a grown man" moment, the unfiltered competitive frustration expressed without professional management, is experienced by the segment of the internet that has followed her story with genuine human investment, as something that is not just funny, but also deeply and specifically human, in the way that only someone who has been through what she has been through and come back to the competition they love could be. The fourth thread is the specific timing of the moment, in the context of the WNBA's current cultural and commercial position. Women's basketball is living through the most commercially and culturally significant period in its history. Every moment that happens on a WNBA floor right now lands in a cultural context that gives it more amplification and more analytical attention than comparable moments would have received in any previous era of the sport. And the Griner moment arrived in that amplified cultural context with enough specific comedic and emotional energy to produce the maximum possible explosion. Now let us talk about what the internet's specific reaction tells you about the broader cultural dynamics of women's basketball right now, because this is the analytically significant layer that the mainstream coverage of the viral moment is completely missing. The internet explosion over Griner's "I am a grown man" is not simply a viral sports moment story. It is a window into the specific way women's basketball lives in the cultural conversation right now, which is differently from how it has ever lived there before, and differently from how it will be possible to analyze accurately if you treat the moment as simply a funny sports clip rather than as a cultural event that reveals something about the moment the sport is in. The WNBA's cultural presence in the internet's daily conversation has been transformed by the Clark era in ways that mean every memorable moment that happens in this league now reaches audiences and triggers cultural reactions that would have been unavailable to any WNBA moment, regardless of its intrinsic interest, before the commercial and cultural transformation Clark's presence has driven. The Griner moment is reaching people who have never watched a WNBA game in their lives. It is being shared by accounts that cover no women's sports content and have no institutional relationship with the WNBA's commercial ecosystem. It is generating reactions from people whose only previous awareness of Brittney Griner was from the news coverage of her detention in Russia and who have never engaged with her as a basketball player. All of those people are now, through the I am a grown man moment, having their first or their most recent engagement with the WNBA's current competitive reality, and with the specific human beings whose athleticism and whose competitive personality make that reality worth watching. That is a commercial and cultural development of genuine significance that the WNBA's institutional management needs to be tracking and responding to with the same urgency that any commercially significant cultural moment demands. And the mainstream coverage of the viral clip that treats it simply as a funny sports moment is missing everything that makes it institutionally significant. Now let us talk about Griner herself and what the I am a grown man moment reveals about her competitive identity and her current relationship with the sport she has returned to, because this is the most personally significant layer of the story, and the one that deserves the most direct and the most honest analytical attention. Griner came back to the WNBA after an experience that redefined what professional basketball means in the context of a human life, in ways that most professional athletes are never required to confront. The period of her detention and the period of her return have been processed by the sports public primarily through the political and diplomatic dimensions of the story, through the debate about the specific decisions made on her behalf and the specific terms of her release, rather than through the competitive and personal dimensions of what it means for a professional basketball player to return to the sport they love after that specific experience. What the I am a grown man moment reveals about that return, in the most compressed and the most authentically human form available, is that Griner is back. Not back in the sense of being present at games and going through the motions of professional competition, but back in the specific and fierce and entirely genuine competitive sense that makes that statement the natural expression of who she is when she is fully inhabiting the competitive moment, rather than managing her presence in it from a distance of professional caution. The rawness of the I am a grown man is the rawness of a competitor who is fully present in the competitive moment, fully invested in its specific details and its specific frustrations, fully herself in the way that only genuine competitive engagement produces. And that rawness is what the segment of the internet that has been following Griner's story with genuine human investment is responding to when it reacts to the clip with something more than pure comedy. It is responding to evidence of something it has been hoping to see, which is the specific human being who went through the worst thing a professional athlete can go through, coming back to the competition that defines her, and being fully and ferociously herself in it. Now, let us talk about the specific comedic dimension of the moment, more directly, because the comedy is real, and it is the element that has given the clip the broadest possible reach across the internet, and it deserves direct analytical attention rather than being set aside in favor of more serious framing. The I am a grown man moment is funny in the specific way that only the most genuinely unexpected things in sports are funny, which is the way that happens when reality produces something that no amount of scripted comedy could improve on, because the specific combination of context, delivery, and content is so perfectly calibrated to produce the specific comedic response that the universe seems to have arranged it deliberately. The comedy works on multiple levels simultaneously, and each level adds to the overall effect in a way that makes the cumulative impact greater than any individual level could produce alone. At the most surface level, there is the simple incongruity of the statement in its sporting context. The idea of a WNBA player making a claim about being a grown man as if it is the most natural and most obvious and most relevant thing to say in response to a basketball officiating decision, delivered with complete competitive conviction, is inherently funny in the way that the most unexpected combinations of the expected and the unexpected always are. One level deeper, there is the specific truth of the statement in the context of Griner's physical reality. The fact that the claim being made is in a very specific athletic sense, simply and accurately descriptive of what her physical presence on a basketball floor represents, in terms of the competitive standard it represents, and the physical demands it creates, and the comparative framework it operates within, which adds the layer of comedy that comes from something being simultaneously absurd and accurate. One level deeper still, there is the specific cultural resonance of the statement in the context of everything the internet has been saying and thinking about Griner's physical presence for the duration of her career. The fact that she has heard her specific physical distinctiveness commented on and processed in every possible form across her entire professional life, has arrived at a moment of competitive frustration, where she simply expressed the most direct and the most unambiguous possible statement of her own physical reality, and demanded that it be acknowledged in the specific form the officiating decision required, which is the deepest level of the comedy, and the one that makes the moment not just funny, but genuinely great. Now let us zoom all the way out to the biggest picture, because the Griner "I am a grown man" moment is in its deepest analytical significance. Not a story about a funny viral clip, or even a story about the specific competitive frustrations that produced the clip. It is a story about what women's basketball looks like right now as a cultural institution, about the specific kinds of moments it produces and the specific ways those moments land in the broader cultural conversation, and about what the internet explosion over this specific moment tells you about where the sport is in its commercial and cultural development, in ways that the standard sports analysis of viral moments consistently fails to surface. The WNBA in the Clark era is producing moments that reach beyond the sport's established audience into the broader cultural conversation in a way that would not have been possible before the commercial and cultural transformation the Clark era has driven. The Griner moment is one of those moments not because of anything Clark did directly, but because the elevated cultural presence that the Clark era has created for the WNBA means that any moment with sufficient comedic or emotional or dramatic energy that happens in this league now reaches the broader cultural conversation in a way that gives it dimensions it would not have had in a previous era. The internet explosion over "I am a grown man" is in this sense a Clark era phenomenon, even though it has nothing directly to do with Clark, because it is the kind of culturally resonant moment that can only achieve this specific magnitude of internet explosion in a cultural context where women's basketball already has the kind of broad cultural presence that makes any memorable moment immediately accessible to an audience that extends well beyond the sport's institutional fan base. Think about what it means for the WNBA's commercial and cultural development that a moment like this can now achieve the specific reach and the specific magnitude of cultural reaction that the Griner clip is producing. Every commercial partner, every broadcast entity, every institutional stakeholder in women's basketball's commercial ecosystem should be looking at this moment not simply as a funny sports story, but as evidence of the specific cultural position that this league now occupies, and the specific commercial opportunity that position creates for every stakeholder who is positioned to benefit from it.